Commander Lisa Martinez stared at the document on her desk. She read it 3 times, certain there was a mistake. After 15 years of fighting aliens across the galaxy, the military wanted to send her to teach children. Not just human children, but alien children too. She pressed the call button on her desk. Admiral Kane's office? This is Commander Martinez. I need to speak with him right away. 20 minutes later, Lisa sat across from Admiral Peter Kane in his spacious office. The walls were covered with medals and pictures from the war against the Zeth Empire. Lisa had earned half of those medals herself. "Sir, there must be some error," Lisa said, holding up the transfer papers. "These orders say I'm being sent to Newton Middle Academy on Haven Prime to teach." Admiral Kane leaned back in his chair. His gray beard made him look older than his 50 years. "There's no error, Commander. You're exactly what that school needs. I'm a soldier, not a teacher. I fight wars. I don't babysit alien kids. The war is over, Martinez. We won because humans think differently than other species. Now we need to make sure the next generation understands that difference is strength, not weakness." Lisa frowned. "I don't understand, sir." Admiral Kane stood and walked to the window. Outside, human and alien workers were rebuilding the space. Station that the Zeth had damaged. Were getting reports from schools across the Federation. Human children and alien children aren't getting along. The alien kids think we're violent warmongers. Our kids think the aliens are weird and stupid. If this continues, we'll have another war in 20 years. Send a diplomat, not a soldier. We tried diplomats. They failed. Admiral Kane turned back to her. "You spent the war learning how different alien species think. You used that knowledge to defeat the Zeth. Now we need you to use it to build peace." Lisa looked at the transfer papers again. "What exactly am I supposed to do at this school?" "Teach a class called Interspecies Cooperation. Help human and alien children learn to work together. Show them that being different doesn't make them enemies." "And if I refuse?" Admiral Kane smiled sadly. "You won't refuse. You're too good a soldier to abandon your duty, even when that duty changes." Lisa knew he was right. She saluted and left his office with her new orders. 3 days later, Lisa's transport ship landed on Haven Prime. The colony world was beautiful, with blue oceans and green forests. It looked peaceful after years of battle-scarred planets and smoking ruins. Newton Middle Academy sat on a hill overlooking the main city. The building was huge, with wings designed for different types of alien students. Some areas had high ceilings for flying species. Others had pools for water-breathing aliens. The human section looked normal, but even it had special rooms for students from different gravity worlds. Principal Helen Davies met Lisa at the main entrance. She was a tall woman, with kind eyes and graying hair. "Commander Martinez, welcome to Newton Academy. I hope you're ready for a challenge. I've fought the Zeth Empire for 15 years. How hard can teaching children be?" Principal Davies laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You'll find out soon enough. Let me show you around." They walked through the hallways. Lisa saw groups of students, but they weren't mixed groups. The humans sat with humans. The tall, scaly Vorthic students sat with other Vorthic. The insect-like Kelari stayed in their own clusters. Each species kept to itself. "This is the problem," Principal Davies explained. "They don't trust each other. The Vorthic think humans are too emotional. The humans think the Vorthic are cold. The Kelari work as a group mind, so they don't understand human individualism. The Sephiroths are energy beings who think physical species are primitive." They passed a classroom where a teacher was trying to get Zenithese students to participate in a discussion. The plant-like aliens sat silently, their leaves rustling slowly. They processed information much slower than other species. The Xenithi need time to think, Principal Davies said, but the other students get impatient waiting for them to answer questions. Lisa watched a group of human students walking past. Some Mer-High students. The fish-like aliens needed to return to water pools every few hours. The humans were making jokes about fish sticks and sushi. The Mer-High pretended not to hear, but their gills fluttered with distress. How long has this been going on? Lisa asked. Since the school opened 5 years ago. It's getting worse. Last month, a Vorthic student called human art meaningless chaos. A human student responded by calling Vorthic poetry robot language. They nearly started a fight. They reached Lisa's new classroom. It was large, with different types of seating, for different species. There were regular desks for humans, heated rocks for Vorthic, soft mounds for Kalari, and floating platforms for Sepharins. Your first class starts in an hour, Principal Davies said. Good luck. Lisa spent the hour reading files on her students. Jake Sullivan was a 12-year-old human boy who had been suspended twice for playing pranks on alien students. Emma Rodriguez was brilliant, but had no patience for students who learned differently than she did. Alex Chung was quiet and smart, but never spoke up in mixed classes. The alien students were equally challenging. Scale of Truth was a Vorthic who believed. Emotions were a sign of mental weakness. Leaf Dancer and Wind was a Xenithi who took 5 minutes to answer simple questions. Hive Song 7 was a Kalari who couldn't function when separated from other Kalari students. When the students arrived, they immediately separated by species. The humans sat on one side of the room. The Vorthic sat perfectly straight in another section. The Kalari clustered together, making soft clicking sounds. The Sepharins floated above their platforms, glowing softly. The Xenithi swayed slowly, their roots rustling. The Mer-High sat near a small water fountain, their gills opening and closing nervously. Lisa stood at the front of the room. 12 different species, 24 students total, all looking at her with suspicion or boredom. Welcome to Interspecies Cooperation, she began. I'm Commander Martinez. Jake Sullivan raised his hand. Are you the Commander Martinez who won the Battle of Kepler Station? Yes. Suddenly, every student was paying attention. Even Scale of Truth looked interested. Cool, Emma Rodriguez said. How many Zeth ships did you destroy? That's not important now, Lisa said. What's important is why we fought that war. Because the Zeth were trying to conquer us, Jake said. Wrong. Lisa replied. We fought because we couldn't understand each other. The Zeth thought we were primitive because we used tactics they considered chaotic. We thought they were evil because they used strategies we considered cold. Both sides were wrong. Scale of Truth spoke up. Emotions cloud logical thinking. The Zeth were correct about human chaos. Before Lisa could respond, Emma Rodriguez stood up. Yeah? Well, your logic is boring. You never create anything new. Emotional creativity produces only random results. Scale of Truth replied coldly. Random? You wouldn't know creativity if it bit your scaly butt. The Kalari students began clicking frantically. The Sepharins pulsed brighter. Leaf Dancer and Wind released spores that made several students sneeze. The Mer-High dove into their water fountain dot in 30 seconds. Lisa's first class had become complete chaos. She looked at the mess of arguing, clicking, glowing, sneezing students, and thought about her conversation with Admiral Kane. Maybe fighting. The Zeth Empire had been easier after all. Quiet. She shouted, using her command voice. The room fell silent. Every student looked at her with wide eyes or equivalent expressions. Lisa realized that this was indeed going to be the hardest battle of her life. Lisa spent her first week watching her students like a military scout watching enemy positions. She sat in the back of other classrooms, took notes during lunch periods, and observed how each species behaved when they thought no adult was looking. What she discovered surprised her. During math class, she watched Jake Sullivan struggle with complex equations while Scale of Truth finished them in seconds. But when the teacher asked them to explain why the math worked, Scale of Truth couldn't give an answer that made sense to anyone else. Jake, however, could explain the same problem using simple words that even the slow-thinking Zenith students understood. In art class, Emma Rodriguez created wild, colorful paintings that made no logical sense. The Vorthic students called her work random noise. But Lisa noticed that Leaf Dancer in Wind stared at Emma's paintings for long periods, her leaves shimmering with what Lisa recognized as Zenithy pleasure responses. The Kalari students, Hive Song 7 and her clustermates, could process multiple conversations at once. They heard everything happening in the room and could repeat entire discussions word for word. But they couldn't understand why human students wanted to work alone on projects that the Sephiran student, Lightbringer of Dawn, could solve energy equations by feeling them rather than calculating them. She was never wrong, but she couldn't explain how she knew the answers. This frustrated the logical Vorthic students and confused the humans. Lisa began keeping a journal of observations. She wrote down each species' strengths and weaknesses. Just like she used to analyze enemy forces during the war, humans were creative and could adapt quickly to new situations. They could explain complex ideas in simple ways, but they were impatient and emotional, often making decisions too quickly. Vorthic were incredibly logical and could solve mathematical problems instantly. They never made emotional mistakes, but they couldn't understand why emotions mattered or how to work with species that didn't think logically. Kalari could multitask better than any computer. They shared information instantly among their group and never forgot anything. But they couldn't function as individuals and didn't understand personal privacy. Sephirans could manipulate energy and understand power systems intuitively. They could see patterns that others missed. But they had trouble with physical objects and got confused by material needs like food or water. Zenithy had perfect memories and could store vast amounts of information. They were patient and thoughtful, never rushing to judgment. But they processed information slowly and couldn't keep up with fast-paced discussions. Murhai were amazing mathematicians who could calculate complex formulas in their heads. They understood fluid dynamics and wave patterns better than anyone. But they needed water to survive and couldn't participate in land-based activities for long periods. After 2 weeks of observation, Lisa realized the real problem. The school was trying to teach every species the same way. The Altarian-designed curriculum focused on memorization and following rules. This worked fine for some species, but was terrible for others. Humans needed hands-on activities and creative projects. Vorthic needed logical, step-by-step instruction. Kalari needed group work and shared goals. Sephirans needed abstract concepts and energy-based examples. Zenithy needed time and patience. Murhai needed problems related to their aquatic nature. Instead, every class used the same teaching method. Students sat in rows, listened to lectures, and took written tests. No wonder they were all struggling and getting frustrated with each other. Lisa decided to test her theory. She asked Principal Davies if she could modify her teaching methods. "What did you have in mind?" Principal Davies asked. "I want to throw out the standard curriculum and try something new." Principal Davies looked worried. The curriculum was designed by the Altarian Council. It's been tested across hundreds of worlds. It's not working here. My students spend more time arguing than learning. What would you do instead? Lisa pulled out her journal. I want to give them problems that require different types of thinking. Problems that can't be solved by just one species working alone. Principal Davies was quiet for a long moment. The school board won't like this. Supervisor Kethmer has already complained about human teaching methods being too chaotic. Who is Supervisor Kethmer? An Altarian who oversees educational standards for this sector. He believes that discipline and structure are the keys to learning. He thinks human creativity is dangerous. Lisa remembered fighting alongside Altarian forces during the war. They were brave and disciplined, but they had trouble adapting when battle plans went wrong. Let me try for 1 month. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to the standard curriculum. Principal Davies agreed, but she looked worried. The next day, Lisa walked into her classroom with a completely different lesson plan. Instead of sitting in species groups, she had arranged the desks in mixed circles. Each circle had students from different species. Today we're going to solve a real problem, Lisa announced. Haven Prime's ocean is polluted with chemicals from the old mining operation. Your job is to figure out how to clean it up. Jake Sullivan raised his hand. Are we supposed to actually fix the ocean? You're supposed to design a solution that could work. The government has been trying to solve this problem for 5 years. Maybe fresh minds can find new answers. She divided the class into 4 mixed teams. Each team had humans Vorthic, Kalari, Sephrons, Xenethi, and Merhai students. At first, the teams fell apart immediately. The humans wanted to rush ahead with the first idea they thought of. The Vorthic insisted on analyzing all the data before starting. The Kalari tried to work on everything at once. The Sephrons suggested solutions that ignored physical reality. The Xenethi sat quietly, thinking. The Merhai dove into their water containers and refused to come out. This isn't working, Ama Rodriguez complained. Scale of Truth keeps saying my ideas are illogical. Because they are, Scale of Truth replied. You want to build a giant filter without calculating whether it can handle the water volume. Your calculations are useless if we can't actually build the thing, Emma shot back. Lisa watched the arguments begin and remembered her first day. But this time, she didn't stop them. Instead, she waited. After 10 minutes of arguing, something interesting happened. Alex Chun, the quiet human student, spoke up for the first time all semester. What if you're both right? He said softly. Emma and Scale of Truth stopped arguing and looked at him. Emma's filter idea is creative, but Scale of Truth is right about needing calculations. What if we use Emma's design, but let Scale of Truth figure out the math to make it work? Scale of Truth considered this. The basic concept has merit. With proper mathematical analysis, it could be functional. Emma looked surprised. You mean my idea isn't completely stupid? Creativity becomes useful when guided by logic. Scale of Truth admitted. Meanwhile, Hive Song 7 had been listening to conversations from all 4 teams simultaneously. Team 3 wants to use biological cleaning agents. Team 1 wants mechanical filters. Team 2 suggests energy dissolution. Team 4 proposes natural restoration. Why not combine approaches? Leaf Dancer in Wind's leaves rustled slowly. She had been thinking the entire time. Ocean systems are complex. Single solutions create new problems. Multiple gentle approaches work better than one strong approach. Lightbringer of Dawn pulsed with excitement. I can feel the energy patterns in polluted water. Chemical pollution creates disharmonious vibrations. But I cannot touch physical matter to fix it. The Merhai student, deep current swimmer, finally surfaced from her water container. I know exactly which chemicals are in the ocean. I swim there every weekend. The pollution moves in predictable patterns with the currents. Suddenly, Lisa saw understanding dawn on several faces. Each species had knowledge and abilities that the others needed. The humans had creative ideas, but they needed Vorthic calculations to make them work. The Vorthic had logical analysis, but they needed human creativity to think of new approaches. The Kalari could coordinate multiple solutions, but they needed individual species to develop specific parts. The Sephiroths could identify energy problems, but they needed physical species to implement solutions. The Xenothi could remember all the data and think through long-term consequences, but they needed faster species to develop immediate actions. The Murhai knew the actual conditions, but they needed land-based species to build equipment. For the first time since Lisa had arrived at the academy, she saw her students actually working together, instead of just sitting in the same room. But her success was about to face a serious challenge. That afternoon, Principal Davies called her to the office. "Supervisor Kethmer is coming for an inspection next week," Principal Davies said. "He's heard about your new teaching methods." "What has he heard?" "That you're encouraging chaos and abandoning proven educational techniques. He wants to evaluate whether you should continue teaching." Lisa felt the familiar tension she used to get before major battles. What happens if he doesn't approve? "You'll be removed from the position, and the school will return to standard Altarian curriculum methods." Lisa looked out the window at her students. They were still working on their ocean cleaning projects, and for the first time, she could see mixed species groups talking and laughing together. Lisa had 5 days to prepare for Supervisor Kethmer's inspection. She spent every free moment working with her students on their ocean cleaning project. What had started as a simple assignment had become something much bigger. The 4 mixed teams were no longer fighting about their different approaches. Instead, they were combining their ideas in ways that surprised even Lisa.team. One had designed mechanical filters using Emma's creative blueprint and Scale of Truth's precise calculations. But they realized the filters would need constant maintenance. That's when Hive Song 7 suggested using Kalari coordination methods to monitor multiple filter stations at once. Team 2 was working on biological solutions. They wanted to create special bacteria that would eat the pollution. Lightbringer of Dawn discovered she could use energy fields to make the bacteria work faster. Leaf Dancer and Wind knew which natural plants could help support the bacteria colonies. Team 3 focused on energy-based cleaning. Lightbringer of Dawn could break down chemicals using controlled energy bursts, but she needed Vorthek calculations to target the right frequencies. The human students figured out how to build devices that could focus her energy precisely. Team 4 worked on natural restoration methods. Deep Current Swimmer provided detailed maps of ocean currents and pollution patterns. The Xenothi students used their perfect memories to recall every environmental restoration project ever attempted. Alex Chun quietly suggested ways to combine successful techniques from different worlds. As the teams worked together, something amazing happened. The students stopped seeing each other as different species and started seeing each other as teammates. With different skills. Jake Sullivan no longer made jokes about fish sticks when Deep Current Swimmer was around. Instead, he asked her questions about ocean currents because he genuinely wanted to understand. Scale of Truth stopped calling human ideas illogical chaos. He began describing them as creative input requiring mathematical refinement. Emma Rodriguez discovered that waiting for Leaf Dancer and Wind to process information wasn't boring. The Xenothi student often came up with insights that no one else had considered. The Kalari students learned to work with individuals instead of just their group mind. They found it challenging but interesting to hear different personal opinions. But Lisa knew that Supervisor Kethmer wouldn't care about teamwork and friendship. He would want to see test scores and curriculum compliance, traditional measurements that her new methods didn't fit. On Wednesday, 2 days before the inspection, Principal Davies brought bad news. Kethmer arrived early, she said. He's been observing classes all morning. He's not happy. What did he see? Traditional history class, where Vorthik students corrected the teacher's timeline 3 times. Traditional literature class, where Human students fell asleep during Altarian poetry readings. Traditional science class where Sephiran students kept floating away because they were bored. Lisa sighed. And what did he say about my class? He hasn't observed you yet. But he asked me why students in other classes keep talking about ocean. Cleaning projects instead of paying attention to their regular lessons. That afternoon, Lisa made a decision that would either save her job or end it completely. She called all her students together after regular classes. I need to tell you something, she said. Supervisor Kethmer is here to decide if I should continue teaching. If he doesn't like my methods, I'll be removed and you'll go back to regular classes. The students looked shocked. Jake Sullivan spoke first. You mean we'll have to go back to sitting in species groups and memorizing boring stuff? That's the traditional Altarian method, Lisa said. But we're learning so much more this way. Emma Rodriguez protested. I understand math better now because Scale of Truth explains the logic behind it. Scale of Truth nodded agreement. Human creative applications make mathematical concepts more interesting to study. Hive Song 7 clicked rapidly, which Lisa had learned meant that Kalari was upset. We function better in mixed groups now. Separation feels incomplete. Lightbringer of Dawn pulsed dimly, her version of sadness. Energy patterns flow better when different minds work together. Leaf Dancer in Wind's leaves rustled slowly. Garden grows stronger with many different plants. Classroom same way. Deep current swimmer surfaced from her water container. In ocean, different fish work together to stay safe. Same here. Alex Chun, who rarely spoke in regular classes, surprised everyone by standing up. We should show him our project. Prove that learning together works better than learning apart. How do we do that? Jake asked. We finish the ocean cleaning project, Alex said. We make it so good that he can't ignore it. Lisa felt a familiar feeling from her military days. The feeling she got when her troops volunteered for dangerous missions because they believed in the cause. You don't understand, she said. This isn't your fight. If the inspection goes badly, I'm the one who gets in trouble. Emma Rodriguez crossed her arms. You spent weeks learning how we think and what we need. You changed everything to help us work together. Now it's our turn to help you. Scale of Truth spoke in his formal Vorthic way. Logic dictates that effective teaching methods should be preserved. We will provide evidence of effectiveness. The other students nodded agreement. Even quiet, deep current swimmer bobbed her head above water in support. Lisa realized that her students had learned something more important than any curriculum could teach. They had learned to care about each other. The next 2 days were like preparing for a military operation. The students worked with incredible focus and cooperation. They combined all 14 projects into one comprehensive solution for cleaning Haven, Prime's ocean. They built working models of the mechanical filters. They grew samples of pollution-eating bacteria. They demonstrated energy-based chemical breakdown. They created detailed plans for natural restoration. But more importantly, they prepared to show how each park required different species working together. On Friday morning, Supervisor Kethmer entered Lisa's classroom for the official inspection. He was tall and thin, like all Altarians, with pale blue skin and large, unblinking eyes. He carried a data pad and wore the expression of someone who had already made up his mind. Principal Davies accompanied him, looking nervous. Several other teachers watched from the hallway. Supervisor Kethmer, Lisa said formally, welcome to our interspecies cooperation class. Kethmer looked around the room at the mixed seating arrangements and frowned. I see you have abandoned proper species separation protocols. Yes, sir. We found that mixed groups produce better learning outcomes. Altarian educational research has proven that species learn best when grouped with their own kind. Different cognitive patterns create confusion and inefficiency. Before Lisa could respond, Jake Sullivan raised his hand. "Sir, can we show you what we learned?" Kethmer looked annoyed. "Child, I am here to evaluate teaching methods, not student projects." "But sir," Emma Rodriguez said politely, "our project proves the teaching method works." Scale of truth stood. Up, logical evaluation requires examination of results, not just procedures. Lisa held her breath. Her students were defending her, but they might be making things worse by contradicting the supervisor. Kethmer's expression grew colder. Very. "Well, you have 10 minutes to present your work, and I will make my evaluation." The students looked at Lisa. She nodded. What happened next was the most impressive demonstration Lisa had ever seen. Her students didn't just present their ocean cleaning project. They showed exactly how each species' abilities contributed to the solution. They explained that human creativity provided initial ideas, but Vorthic logic was needed to make them practical. Kalari coordination was essential for managing multiple systems, but individual species had to develop specific components. Saffron energy manipulation could solve problems that physical methods couldn't handle, but physical species were needed to build the equipment. Zenithy memory and patience were crucial for long-term planning, but faster species were needed for immediate implementation. High knowledge of actual conditions was vital, but land-based species were needed to create solutions. As the presentation continued, Lisa watched Kethmer's expression. His frown deepened, but she thought she saw something else. Surprise, maybe even interest. The 10 minutes stretched to 20, then 30. The students were so enthusiastic and well-prepared that even Kethmer couldn't stop them. When they finished, the room was silent. Kethmer stared at his datapad for a long moment. "This is highly irregular," he finally said. Lisa's heart sank, but then Kethmer looked up at the students. "However, the results are undeniable. You have solved a problem that has challenged professional engineers for 5 years. And you have done it by using methods that our current curriculum does not teach." He paused, looking around the room at the mixed species groups who were now holding hands, tentacles, claws, and energy fields in nervous anticipation. "I must make my report to the Federation Education Board," he said. "They will make the final decision about these teaching methods." As he left the room, Lisa couldn't tell if she had won or lost the most important battle of her teaching career. 3 days passed after the inspection. Lisa tried to continue normal classes, but her students were worried and distracted. They kept asking if she had heard anything from Supervisor Kethmer. "Not yet," Lisa told them each time. "These decisions take time," but privately she was worried too. Kethmer had seemed impressed by the presentation, but Altarians were hard to read. Their formal culture didn't show emotions the way humans did. On Wednesday morning, Principal Davies called Lisa to her office. When Lisa arrived, she found Admiral Kane sitting in a chair next to the principal's desk. "Admiral?" Lisa said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" Admiral Kane smiled. "I came to see how my best commander is doing in her new assignment." "You could have just called. I wanted to see this place for myself. I've been hearing interesting reports." Principal Davies looked nervous. "The inspection report was sent to the Federation Education Board yesterday. We should have a decision soon." Admiral Kane leaned forward. "I've already seen the report." "That's why I'm here." Lisa's heart jumped. "What did it say?" "Supervisor Kethmer recommended that your teaching methods be studied and possibly implemented across the Federation." Lisa stared at him. "He what?" "He wrote that your students demonstrated problem-solving abilities that exceeded anything he had seen in 20 years of education oversight. He said the cooperation between species was remarkable, and that traditional methods had never produced such results." Principal Davies looked as shocked as Lisa felt, but he seemed so disapproving during the inspection. Admiral Kane chuckled. Altarians don't show approval the way humans do. But Cathmer was very impressed. He wants to bring Federation observers to study your classroom methods. Lisa sat down heavily. I can't believe it. There's more, Admiral Kane said. The Federation Education Board wants you to help redesign curriculum for academies across the galaxy. They're offering you a promotion to Education Coordinator with a permanent posting here on Haven Prime. Before Lisa could respond, the school's communication system crackled to life. Commander Martinez, please report to your classroom immediately. There's an urgent situation. Lisa ran through the hallways, worried that something had happened to her students. When she reached her classroom, she found chaos. But it was good chaos. Her students were crowding around a communication screen, cheering and celebrating. When they saw her, they rushed over. Commander Martinez, Jake Sullivan shouted. You have to see this. Emma Rodriguez was bouncing with excitement. The Haven Prime government wants to use our ocean cleaning project. Scale of Truth, who never showed emotion, actually looked pleased. Our calculations have been verified by professional engineers. The project is scientifically sound. Lightbringer of Dawn pulsed so brightly that several students had to look away. The Energy Ministry wants to hire me as a consultant when I graduate. Leaf Dancer and Wind's leaves were shimmering with joy. City planners want to discuss our natural restoration methods. Deep Current Swimmer was practically doing flips in her water container. The ocean cleanup will start next month. I can swim in clean water again. Alex Chun, still quiet but more confident now, stepped forward. They said our project was the first time anyone had combined so many different approaches successfully. They want to use it as a model for other environmental problems. Lisa looked around at her students. 3 months ago, they had been 12 separate groups who barely spoke to each other. Now they were one team, celebrating together. There's something else. Hive Song 7 clicked rapidly. The news service wants to interview us about working across species lines. And the Federation Academy wants to study our project for their advanced engineering courses. Scale of Truth added. Lisa felt overwhelmed. This is wonderful, but you know this means I might not be your teacher much longer. If I take the promotion, I'll be helping other schools instead of teaching classes. The students looked at each other. Jake Sullivan spoke for the group. We figured that might happen. But we also figured out something else. What's that? Emma Rodriguez grinned. You taught us how to work together. Now we can teach other students the same thing. We want to help, Alex Chun said. We can visit other schools and show them how. Cooperation works. Scale of Truth nodded formally. We have become effective ambassadors for interspecies collaboration. Lisa realized that her students had learned the most important lesson of all. They didn't need her to keep working together. They had internalized the cooperation and understanding that she had tried to teach them. Over the next few weeks, amazing things began happening. The story of Newton Middle Academy spread across the Federation. Other schools requested visits from Lisa's students to learn about their methods. Lisa accepted the promotion to Education Coordinator. Her new job was to help schools across the galaxy implement cooperative learning methods. But she kept her base at Newton Academy, where she could continue working with her original students. 6 months later, Lisa stood in her old classroom watching. A new group of students. This class had Human, Vorthik, Kalari, Sephirin, Xenothi, and Merhai students, just like her first class. But they also had students from 3 new species that had recently joined the Federation. The difference was remarkable. These students had heard about the ocean cleaning project. They had talked to older students who had learned cooperation methods. They came to class already expecting to work together across species lines. Lisa watched Jake Sullivan, now an 8th grader, helping a nervous new crystalline student understand how group projects worked. Emma Rodriguez was patiently explaining human creative processes to a logical robotics student. Scale of Truth was teaching a young Vorthek how to appreciate other species. Different thinking styles. Her former students had become teachers themselves, passing on the lessons they had learned. That afternoon, Lisa received a message from Admiral Kane. The border colonies were reporting unprecedented cooperation between species. Young leaders who had graduated from schools using the new cooperative methods were working together to solve problems that had stumped older generations for years. Colony conflicts were decreasing. Trade between species was increasing. Most importantly, the children growing up in mixed species communities saw cooperation as normal rather than unusual. Lisa looked out her office window at groups of students from different species playing together in the schoolyard. Human children were learning Vorthek logic games. Kalari students were teaching humans how to work in coordinated groups. Sephrin students were helping Xenethi students process information faster. Murhai students were showing land-based species how to think about fluid dynamics. She remembered her first day at the academy, when the students had separated by species and argued about whose way of thinking was superior. Now, 3 years later, new students automatically formed mixed groups and celebrated their differences as strengths. Lisa opened her computer and began writing her quarterly report to the Federation Education Board. She wrote about test scores and graduation rates and curriculum effectiveness. But the most important part of her report was simpler. She wrote, "Mission accomplished." The next generation of Federation citizens understand that diversity is strength, not weakness. They see cooperation as natural and conflict as a problem to be solved together. We are raising children who will not need to fight the wars that previous generations fought. Lisa paused and looked at a photo on her desk. It showed her original class holding their ocean cleaning project award. 24 students from 12 different species, all smiling, laughing, or showing equivalent expressions of joy. She added one final line to her report. "I spent 15 years fighting wars to protect humanity's place in the galaxy. Now I spend my days building a future where those wars will never be necessary. This is the victory that matters most." As she finished writing, Lisa heard familiar voices in the hallway. Her original students, now in high school, had come to visit their old classroom. They did this every few months, checking on the younger students and sharing their experiences. Lisa smiled and went to greet them. Her greatest battle was won, not with weapons or strategy, but with understanding and patience. She had learned that building peace was harder than fighting wars, but far more rewarding. The future of the galaxy was in good hands.